Today we're going to be talking about soft power. We live in a very traditional masculine world, especially in the Western world. I mean, not just the Western world anymore, to be honest, even in the East, globally, we live in a world where the masculine energy, the masculine perspective, logic, doing, thinking, analyzing wins. And so people devalue feminine skills, and the world is aching for femininity. And although it's disrespected, I feel like now we live in a time where it's needed more than ever. And other than it being needed more than ever, I also think that it, for a woman, and in particular, a sovereign heiress, is exactly what she needs to live the absolute most fulfilling life that she can ever live. So let's talk a little bit about the concept of power. What is power? Power is influence. Power is the ability to make a change. Power is the ability to get people to do things through you trying to control them, you trying to influence them, you trying to have them see things from a different perspective, and you having the opportunity or the position to be able to do that. Now, going back to what I said earlier, because people would usually think of things in the masculine lens in the world that we live in today, power is traditionally looked at from the perspective of it being forceful, of it being violent, of it being aggressive, of it being something that you have to push. You know, that Tony Robbins has talked about this kind of like push energy of needing to do things with like sheer willpower. And I'm here to tell you that I know that as a sovereign heiress, power is something that you're intrigued by. I know that influence is something you're intrigued by. I know that you know deep down that you are meant to use power and influence to make a difference in the world. And maybe you've been doing it with power and force and push energy for the past little while. But I know you're tired. Girl, don't I know it. Because you're not meant to do it that way. You, especially as a woman, a sovereign heiress, are meant to do it softly. And I like to describe soft power, especially in this community of the Sovereign Heiress Society, as sensual sovereignty. Soft power isn't speaking softly and trying to get people to do what you want by like being really delicate and soft. It's performative. That's not what real soft power is. You know, power is the ability to influence, and talking softly has nothing to do with whether or not people are going to be influenced by what you have to say. Like, that's not how influence and power and changing people's perspectives works. The most influential thing that you can do, the most powerful thing that you can do to get what you want in life is embody sensual sovereignty. Now, I'm going to give you an example. I am incredibly close with my family, as most sovereign heiresses are. You know, you're an heiress to your family lineage and whatever it is that they're blessing you with, whether it be like their titles, their history, their power, their money, their businesses, whatever it may be. You're inheriting something. You're an heiress. And sometimes that can cause complications. And sometimes it can mean that your family lineage will often think that they dictate the terms of how you choose to live because of that, not reliance, but connection or relationship, or, you know, not dependence, but right, there is a power dynamic there. Power is being used a lot in this video today. And the tendency that I find most sovereign heiresses to pick up because of that power dynamic is that push energy that I was mentioning earlier, right? That masculine energy of trying to exert power by asserting your own dominance and pushing against this power dynamic, right? If I had to give an example of a story of my own, it would be whenever my parents would tell me to live my life a certain way. And because I knew that they were giving me so much and raising me with so much and that I had it really, really lucky, I still didn't like feeling like I didn't have any form of autonomy in my life. And so I would push back. I'd be like, no, I'm going to do whatever I want. Oh my gosh, like the most obvious example that comes up is my parents raising me with this like notion that I should know how to cook. And like my parents are super modern, right? Like they're traditional in some aspects, but like by no means were they saying that I needed to learn how to cook so that I could like have a man in the future. But I resisted for so long. And I remember being in my like young years actively thinking, I'm not going to learn how to cook. Why do I need that? Like, it doesn't matter. And I think I subconsciously perpetuated this idea that they were doing it so that I would do it for a man, which is not something that I ever intended to do unless it came from me authentically and from my heart. And so I resisted. There was that push energy of like, I don't need your advice. I don't want to listen to you. I don't care what you have to say. I'm my own person. I know what I'm doing. Like I have self-respect and I don't appreciate you thinking that you know better than me what's meant for me. And that doesn't actually get you respect. In fact, I think it makes people view you as a kid. You're looked at like you are a child, you're immature, you don't know better. And to a certain degree, I understand that because that energy of like push energy as an heiress doesn't like you're trying to exert sovereignty out in the world, right? Outwards. But that's not like what real power looks like. At least in a way that will actually get you what you want as a woman. Like with the identity that you hold, it might work for other people, but you might notice that it doesn't work for you, and it's because it's not meant to. The real way to exert sovereignty is not outside, it's inside. It's through the law of detachment and embodying what you know about the law of detachment, which is essentially that your ability to be able to get anything comes from your ability to disconnect from that end result in the first place. And so I'll use the example of cooking, for example. Me getting triggered by my parents' request and constant requests and nagging of me learning to cook at a young age didn't need to manifest in the form of me saying that I didn't want to cook, saying that I didn't need to cook, and like using that push energy to exert force over persuading them to believe that I didn't need it and to like back off. What I should have embodied and what I embody now is sovereignty internally over my inner knowing of exactly what it is that I was trying to convince them of and tell them of the entire time, which is that it's okay if I don't know how to cook. I'll learn when the time is right. And that detachment from needing to convince them freed me. It gave me the sense of peace and worthiness and awareness of who I'm intended to be immediately by no longer exerting sovereignty outside, but rather inside. Ownership over my knowing, ownership over what I knew to be right for me. And I say sensual sovereignty because I think that as a woman, by infusing the two, you really understand conceptually what it should feel like inside as a woman. Sovereignty can feel like a masculine word because it's associated with politics, it's associated with war, it's associated with countries being at arms with each other. And who's traditionally been in war all this time, girl? It's men. But it doesn't need to feel like that when you start to embody it from the inside. It can just feel like you honoring yourself and you being devoted to what you internally know in your soul to be true, and not needing to prove it to anybody, but you just respecting something that you want deeply for yourself by owning it. And that is the secret sauce. So the next time that you're ever in a situation where you know that power is at play, you know that influence is something that it's time for you to utilize, try using sensual sovereignty. Try thinking of it as a softer exertion of power in a way that lets you feel like a woman, lets you feel aligned, lets you honor who you are as a sovereign heiress. You're going to notice this as a theme through a lot of my work. We are who we are. A big part of feeling at peace and going through life feeling clean and calm is owning our story. And we are heiresses. We are sovereign. It's a deep desire. You know it's what you want, and if you want it, it's yours. And you don't have to allow not being received as anything but that let you act in a way that isn't authentic to who you are. You know, not being received as a sovereign heiress well doesn't have to turn you into a man. Not being received as a sovereign heiress well doesn't have to turn you into someone who doesn't come from a powerful lineage. You're better off leaning into it, leaning into the sovereignty, leaning into the sensuality of being a woman, and you'd be surprised how easily influential it will make you. So wishing you the best, and if you felt like this made a difference in your ability to move through the world, then I'd love to hear more. Tell me about it in the comments, but otherwise, love you so much and wishing you the best. Mwah, mwah, mwah.